I mean, Doritos are tasty. Do you know
Welcome
that
to the Backpack Show.
Right, we're discussing food today. Do you know that Doritos hit all of the sort of Bermuda triangles of flavor and taste? That's what they're like scientifically engineered to be irresistible.
I thought you were going to say they're scientifically engineered to be the worst food nutritionally for you.
No, they're actually pretty good. Think about it. You're eating a whole grain right there.
Are you mansplaining Doritos to me?
Yes.
Because today is all about how to dismantle gender bias and build an inclusive corporate culture.
Who do we have today?
We have the band of sisters, authors of You Should Smile More. They have worked together, known each other for 25 years, and have experience in all different types of organizational environments, from big organizations to small. And they're going to tell us how to dismantle gender bias in the workplace and build a more inclusive culture.
4 guests: Lori, Angelique, C, and Katie. We're just missing Mitzi. Backpack Show.
I love the intro. Always makes me smile.
I always see something new every time too.
So let's see. Yes, your mom is here.
Hello, my mom.
Oh boy, I know that she's going to hear some of the anecdotes and be like, "Yep, guys do that."
Oh dear.
Well,
yeah, she had a long career at the phone company.
Hi, Chloe.
Back before people knew what things like mansplaining even were.
Well, let's talk. Well, there's mansplaining, but there are women who don't support other women in the workplace.
That's for sure.
Surprisingly. Yeah, I know. Well, maybe not surprisingly. I guess we've all seen Mean Girls, but
crabs in a bucket. That's one of my big theories. Hey,
we have some people to thank.
Oh, we do have some people to thank. I mean, we got a show because we have this thing called StreamYard. You could use your own bendy duck. See Brogan.net/StreamYard. You can make your own damn show. You can have lots of fun. You can invite on women, more women, and extra women. Hey, want to make a podcast? You can. Go to castos.com. It's as easy as peas in a pod.
It's so easy. Chris will do it.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, want a .online domain? You can get one. cbrogan.net/online. You can get a channel all by yourself. Just put in the code Chris to get a discount. You get $1 for a whole year or so.
Enter the code Chris in all capital letters if you want the discount. I don't know why. Right. I just know that that's what you have to do.
Lowercase doesn't matter. Hey, want to go to a search engine? You can search up this new book, You Should Smile More. Go to presearch.com. It's not Google. It's more fun, and you can do cool, interesting things with it. It's more fun. Something. I don't know. It's my show. All right. So we have a lot of people.
Interesting concept.
First Steps Capital Management works with female and minority entrepreneurs to help them enter the startup space.
So all this is great. Super relevant. Hi, Leslie.
Super. Hey, Leslie. Leslie. Hey, it's my biological father, too.
Stop it.
There we go.
All right, we got bunches of people to bring in.
Angelique, Lori, and Katie.
Are they all in the same order? Yeah, they are.
They are. My screen wasn't big enough. I had to scroll to get to Katie. Hi, Katie. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Now, Chris, your connection's given up, so you got to close your Spotify or something.
My Spotify? No, I have 8 other things open because I have a press release on how to dismantle gender bias in the workplace.
Well, I guess the solution is to block the men from joining virtual meetings by doing something to their IP address. So I guess, first of all, band of sisters, how did this all get started? So you worked together, met each other, were like, this is life-changing. How did this happen?
Yeah. I wish
it's like how'd the Beatles meet,
Yeah, I feel like it's like years ago when I broke my ankle and people said, how'd you break your ankle? And I was like, oh, I was running in the woods. And everyone's like, you need a better story than that. Like, you need to have been skydiving, or you need to have been going for a crazy shot. I feel that way a little bit about the band of sisters. Like, we came together so organically, which is great. So the quick story, I'll start, and then I'll let others jump in. So we did work together, the 4 of us that are here, and then 2 of the other sisters, Mitzi and Dawn, who aren't with us today. We worked together for decades over the course of our career at PepsiCo, and we kept in touch after we had left. And then we were at a dinner about 3 years ago, 2019. We were at a dinner with the former CEO of PepsiCo, actually, who got us back together. And we were talking and laughing and talking about, kind of moments from back in the day when we worked together at PepsiCo. And we were laughing about things that used to drive us crazy. And after laughing about it for a little bit, we kind of realized it wasn't that funny. And some of the things that used to drive us crazy, they weren't really probably that funny in the day, but actually they really, really weren't that funny because they were still happening. And we realized we were still seeing those issues in the corporate lives that we lived after PepsiCo, and certainly still on the boards that we're on today. And so what we started to think about was, rather than just drinking wine and laughing about this stuff, maybe we could actually do something to accelerate change and make things better.
Everyone agree, or did you think the wine should have stayed?
Well, the wine always helps. But we also talked to some younger women. In fact, we talked to some of the children of our colleagues. We talked to other women that we knew who were earlier in their career, and we're kind of stunned to find out that a lot of the stuff, it was taking slightly different forms, but they were encountering a lot of the same moments, burdens, hurdles, whatever you want to call them in the workplace. And they were kind of oddly less prepared or less aware that the stuff was going to be there. When we came out, we kind of expected it. But these girls are coming out of post-Title IX. They've been, running things in their elementary schools and their high schools and their colleges, and they're graduating at record rates. And then they come into a workplace and they find that it's not exactly the meritocracy that they had found through their educational career.
And we didn't set out to write a book. Originally we had this lovely conversation around a dinner table, and then we kept talking, and then we started speaking, and we thought, oh, we'll go and talk to people, and this will create interesting content. But then there was a little global pandemic that happened, and that forced us into our homes and into a Google Doc where we just wrote all our ideas down, and yada, 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 it turned into a book.
So the book's called You Should Smile More, and it's talking about how to dismantle gender bias in the workplace. I find people, this is almost like when we have conversations about race as well. I mean, people are very often very twitchy about this sort of thing, and they say, we don't have gender bias. How do you even, and obviously fellas say that right away. What are you talking about? I love women. How do we get that conversation even started? How do you meat tenderize them into thinking this is something they've got to do?
Well, I think some of it is we're trying to bring awareness to it, because you're right. A lot of times people the things we focus on are so small. That's the whole point, where this has nothing to do with Me Too or any of those very important issues, but this is not what we're doing. It is the small things that you might not even notice. It's like, hey, Susan, will you take the notes? It's like, why is a woman always taking the notes, or send up the next Zoom call, or just a variety of examples, assumptions we make on women's behalf. And in some cases, people would think, gosh, I don't want to be petty. Is it too small to bring up? So they just don't say anything. So they just kind of continue. And we've had conversations with men, and a lot of times they're like, oh, is that a thing? I didn't know that was even a thing. I didn't realize that made people feel awkward, or I shouldn't be doing this. And so that just continues. So our point, hopefully with this book, we have the 31 chapters. Again, everything we talked about has been vetted against younger women today, so that's it's still happening, and we try to give language to it that allows people to say, one chapter is called Great Idea, Greg. The whole concept of a woman might say something and then it doesn't go anywhere, and then some guy restates it, and all of a sudden they're like, hey Chris, a good idea, and that kind of goes down that path, and so we're trying to give language to it so that it becomes more obvious. And we're also trying to, the book is appealing to 3 different audiences. It's the women who are going to experience the micro moments, but it's not their only issue to solve. There's no way we're putting this on women's backs, because it's impossible to solve for women, alone. It's also to bosses, and this could be either gender, that want to have a more productive and inclusive team. So bosses, we come up with the solutions, or we have, very practical solutions that could help. And then the biggest group that we talk to are witnesses. So these are people, you're in the room when it happens, and how do you want to be an ally? What do you do? So we think awareness, giving language to it, and then giving practical suggestions to all these groups will start making a big difference.
Chris is always very good about giving credit where it's due. So I've seen it. If people will be like, oh, great idea, Chris, I'll be like, actually, Marcia just said it.
Well, that's one of the key things, right? Is bringing allies, people who are there who can help do it. And it is, I think, back to your question on how do you bring men in, it's by making this a conversation where everybody is, we try and presume as much positive intent as possible. And then, by just kind of making folks aware of it, then maybe we can hopefully eradicate it. And we have plenty of proofs of concept in our own life, right? Where we're just by driving awareness, we've gotten the stories of oh my gosh, I would have reacted completely different in this moment if I had not been aware of what you had told me. So that's been gratifying.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Cody who says, "This is awesome. As someone growing up in a southern rural town and a mom who was the breadwinner and climbed her way to executive level, all this hits close to home."
One of the funny stories it's a small thing, but the idea of counting the room, and it's just one of those things that like every woman does, or I think most women do, is you just do the math. You're like, oh, wow, there's only 2 of us in this room, or wherever you are. And as we were talking to women, it's like, oh my gosh, I do that too. And it's, I think that you're just used to being outnumbered. So there's lots of little moments that seem to resonate and hit home that they didn't know that everybody else either did or experienced.
Yes. And there's a lot of joy in feeling that you're not alone. Like you read these stories and you're like, I thought it was just me. And then suddenly you realize there's this whole community of people that like, no, it's not just you. And here's what you can do.
Right.
About being outnumbered, we just had an experience. We've been this whole week with the launch. We've been going to different events and interviews. And so we've been in the elevator all at the same time, sometimes with 1 or 2 other women. And then like the door will open and a guy enters and he's like, oh my gosh. And like, kind of like makes a big deal out of it. Like, oh my gosh, can I join this elevator? And it's a really, like for them, I'm sure that's notable. For us, it's like, this has been happening for since we've been 22. And then we never even think about it. You're often the only female in the elevator. It's not even noteworthy. You're not coming home and be like, guess what happened?
Chris would wait as long as he had to get on that elevator instead of like another one.
It sounds like the best place to be. But one thought I was having when you were talking about this too is that there are things that I see happen in meetings a lot, and I'm very fortunate to be in a company where we try to call it out and get it back to normal. But for instance, fellas will talk over a woman, and sometimes it's the woman's just getting ready to put their point in, and they're not necessarily jamming their foot into the conversation when there's a lot of people. There's a lot of talk over. What we've done is, and I'm just asking like, for validation or something, is we say, oh, I think, Joe was saying something there. Is that, what's your advice on that one?
So, Chris, one of the things I would say is part of the joy of the book is because there's 6 of us, there isn't just one piece of advice or one thing that we think is the right way to handle things. So on all of the 3 areas, whether it's for the woman, who's being asked to take notes or being talked over, or whatever, what can she do? What can anyone in the room do, regardless of level, to go from being a bystander to an ally? And then, of course, what can leaders or bosses do, of any gender? So I think what you've stated is a really good example of what allies or bosses could do, or anyone in the room, which is just to sort of, call it out in the nicest possible way and just say, oh, I think Susan was about to say something. I think that is one really good way of doing it. A couple of other things that we learned when we were interviewing people for the book, especially some of the younger women who were live in a very technology first world. And some of the women we talked to have only ever worked in a Zoom or a WebEx world because they started their careers in 2019, 2020. And so they've always lived in this way. So they talk about things like using the chat feature as a way when they're really frustrated and nobody is hearing them to sort of just make themselves be heard in the chat, using the raise hand feature in the chat. So using some of the technology to make sure that they are heard is one of the other things. In addition, what you said about allies, that's one of the things that people who are experiencing it can also do.
And Chris, just to add to the validation of your approach, it is noticed. I guarantee you it's noticed. If you are the leader of that room and you're actively making sure people get credit, like that's talked about afterwards. And
in a good way.
Yes, very positively. Like you're the leader that people want to have. And if you're not doing it, that's talked about also. So there's a lot of incentive to pay attention.
On this show, we have a different way of handling it.
Oh, for gosh sake, stop talking. Let the woman speak.
That works too.
Oh, I love that.
Can I have that for my regular life? I feel like I actually want that on one of those like little paddles that they use at like a Sotheby's auction. I just want a little stop talking panel.
You need like an easy button, so you just hit it in the middle of the conference table.
That's the technology we need.
What about women who don't always support other women the way they should? Because I've seen women do some of the very same things that we take issue with.
Yeah.
In terms of minimizing women's ideas, not hearing them, or responding to them in a negative way just because they think they were too forceful in their delivery of an idea or something like that, which for a man wouldn't be an issue.
You know, one I can think of, there were this variety of scenarios that obviously it happens. The one that frustrates me in particular is we have this whole chapter of like, you know, Father of the Year, where the guy does a small, you know, goes to one teacher conference at 3:00 in the afternoon. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, Chris is such a great dad. And then, you know, Kerry the next day has to go to a doctor's appointment with her daughter. And they're like, oh, you know, she's not that reliable, and kind of gets an eye roll. And so, but the people that usually are saying Chris is such a great dad are other women. And anyways, so in some cases they help perpetuate that issue. And so I think in some cases it's calling that out. Another one of my pet peeves is being called a girl versus a woman. And like, you know, and a lot of times I think women call each other girls as well. So I think that doesn't help the situation when you hear it. But I think that word is so common that it's just become the background noise. But I think women also, to me, make that a bigger hurdle.
I take issue with female. Calls me a female.
Yeah. So we all have our things, right? And that's actually one of the things as we went through the writing of the book. It's like, that bothers you? That doesn't bother me. So we even had, you know, kind of some difference of opinion among ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's where the awareness goes a long way for both genders, because I was definitely in the camp of, oh, I think I say that. I call my team girls, you know. But then when I heard C's rationale and why it matters and, you know, how it diminishes women's stature, I said, actually, that's a really good point. So awareness can go a long way with other women. And again, we're assuming positive intent, and almost everything in the book is not really anchored in gender. It just happens to happen more to women. And so therefore,
how do you
if we
recognize though? So if you're, for example, like a hiring manager or a supervisor or the lead of a department, how do you recognize when what you're doing is a microaggression versus just how you feel about something?
I mean, that's part of the whole intent of the book. It's why there's 31 chapters, not, 4 chapters, is because there's a lot of examples of this. And I always think about, so the book really starts with this unconscious bias. Some people, when we were interviewing them, they called it accidental sexism, whatever you want to call it. But it definitely starts, I would say, with there's a lack of awareness. So the first thing is making people aware. There's a little bit of sort of pattern recognition or machine learning, right? Once you start to realize these things. So I'll give an example. So one of the chapters in the book, one of the sections is all around kind of lazy language. So it's things that we say, we're interviewing someone, we're giving feedback, and we're like, she's just not a good cultural fit. Or we're doing performance reviews and we say, oh, she just doesn't have gravitas, or she's too emotional. We say all these really vague things that really don't mean anything. They're so non-specific, you can't really do anything about them. So my point is, once you learn that the first time, and then you learn a better way of dealing with it, is situation, behavior, impact. Here's the thing that I noticed about Gwen. Here's when it happened. Here was the situation. Here was the behavior. And here was the impact, whether that's you're talking about somebody or to somebody. I think once you start to realize about one thing, your mind is just more open and you're realizing about other things. So that's one thing. And then the last thing I'll say on this topic is, I think part of it is around creating an environment where people can speak like truth to power and truth to others. So whether it's something innocuous as I'm the leader of the group, it's Monday morning, and I'm going on and on about the, Succession or whatever I watched the night before, because I watch it and I'm fascinated by it. And so the other people around the table who work for me, they smile and nod and they pretend that they're interested in it, right? The reality of it is probably only 20% of the people at that table watch Succession, and the others are like, but they don't want to be rude because it's a hierarchy and they work for me and they've been taught to sort of smile and pretend that they're interested. So once that I learn that, like, oh, Lori, pay attention to the dynamics in the room. When you're saying something, don't just believe that you're interesting because people are nodding. Don't believe you're funny because people are laughing, but actually look around the room and sort of count the room in a different way. Who's engaged? How many people are actually participating, right? And so to just learn that whether you're a man or a woman, we all are on this continuous journey to keep learning.
Cody's going to get I hope he's going to get the book for his mom. He says he'll let her know about it. Hey, why don't you get it for her? That would be nice.
Can we bring Kerry everywhere with us? I feel like she just needs to come along. Tuesday, New York, 8 a.m. We'll see you
All
downtown.
right. I'll be there. I'll shill the hell out of this book. Make all my meetings so much better. Although my boss is a woman and her boss is a woman, and you know what? I'm enjoying it immensely. So Cody says that he remembers his mom saying she had to constantly find her way. We have a question from Eugene that I wanted to present to all of you. I work with a lot of women in business. Would you prefer women-led companies or female-led companies? You know which I'd prefer, Eugene. Let's see what everybody else says.
I mean, I think we certainly need more female-led companies, right? And there's definitely evidence that female-led companies have they can have great success. There was one study I read about a female-led company. They worked the language that was in things like performance appraisals and stuff like that started to modify and moderate and be less of the kind of more male traditional terms of leadership and was a bit more I think balanced in terms of what you want from leaders. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I think, yeah, we would like to see more women leaders. I don't know whether I would say in this company or that company, it should be a woman or shouldn't be a woman, but we need more women leaders of business. We need it in politics. We need representation everywhere because we're 50% of the population.
It might have been a terminology question though.
Yeah, yeah.
Female-led
Woman versus female.
But yes to all.
Okay,
no, it's a great answer.
Wrong question. Wrong answer.
But you're
Kerry, I'd
also
love to
right.
Thank you.
Kerry, I'd love to hear your point of view on female.
Oh boy. So what is my problem with it exactly? It's hard to define. I feel like it sort of gets down to dicey questions of gender identity for me. So because trans women are women and other people who maybe are non-binary, it just feels very like biology specific to say female, like a scientific term. So I feel like to be more inclusive, we ought not to use scientific terms.
Kerry, it's a great example. I feel like this is something, even when people ask us the question about, calling people in, and we'll talk about, either gender, men or women. And every time I say it, I feel like, you know what, Lori, there's a better way of saying that. And I feel like that's part of my constant learning journey. So I'll try and say, any gender. And so I think the whole thing on that is if we all take the attitude that like every day we're going to learn something, there's a nuance, like society doesn't stay stagnant, right? It changes and evolves over time. And it gets back to that attitude of like, if people can sort of speak truth to the room and just sort of say, hey, it's interesting. I know that you say female led, whatever, you may not realize this, but when you say that, it makes me feel like, as a trans woman or someone who support, transgender people, I feel like that's a little too, sort of biology specific. Lori, would you be comfortable saying, women-led companies or any gender or, kind of helping people along the journey? And I think it's part of, I love the words about like calling people in versus calling people out. Just like our book isn't about Me Too moments, it's also not about cancel culture. It's not about like, gotcha, you said the wrong thing, you're offensive. It's about, again, kind of bringing people in, making them aware of things and then help bringing them along the learning journey.
I'm not even saying that I'm necessarily correct, by the way. I'm just saying that's how it strikes me, and I'm willing to admit that.
Yeah.
Another trick we sometimes talk about is swap out the opposite word and see if it makes sense. So in the example of, girl versus boy, if you think, did you meet the new girl in accounting makes sense, swap in boy and see if it makes sense. Did you meet the new boy in accounting? Okay, you'd never say that. So you shouldn't say girl. So I guess
did you meet the new female in accounting?
Yeah, like
right.
that's
Right.
weird. And I don't think you'd say male-led company because that's weird. So maybe we're working it out right here.
Yeah, look at this real work happening. Did you meet the new male in accounting?
One thing we haven't talked a lot about is why companies should do this, because they may think, I could see people saying, oh boy, here we go with the woke stuff and like being annoyed about it. But there is a benefit to the company in terms of, when you include everyone, better results. So when you have to convince people that this matters, how do you do it?
I mean, I think, see, you want to go ahead?
You go ahead.
So, I mean, it starts with performance. You want to get down to, kind of like what your company's trying to do. It's trying to be successful and it's trying to make money. And companies with greater diversity and greater inclusion have demonstrated time and time and time again, every study, that they are more successful. So, your side benefit might be that you have better like employee engagement scores, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a better performing company. So if you put it in those terms, sometimes you can get people to really open up and think about it. And then also, as you just look at what's happening right now with the workforce and whether it's the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, whatever term is out there right now, there is a war for talent. And companies spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to bring people into their company. If you're not creating an environment where they want to stay and where they feel valued and where they bring their whole selves to work, then you are just churning money on recruitment. And you need to be spending, you can be a lot more efficient if you bring people in and then you actually keep them. So you can keep it very practical dollars and cents, and I think break through to a lot of people.
I mean, they should want to do it anyway, but
Yeah, it would be nice that you would
Sure.
like your people to be involved. But at the end of the day, if all you care about is how much money you make, we've got a pretty good argument for that too.
Ooh, this is interesting. Patrick says, weird application. How do dental hygienists, 97% female, approach dentists, becoming more female, but mostly male, when the power imbalance is clear when they walk in the door? Oof. Help. Help the
Don't anybody
hygienist.
answer all at once. But no, I mean,
I
what he's
suggest
saying
you wait
is,
until they're in the chair with their mouth open and you have implements.
Then
But
the
no, if
power
that
balance
environment,
shifts.
the lion's share of it's the nature of that business industry. So, for instance, I work in tech. It's 70% male, no matter what. We have two people on our executive leader, 2 females, 2 women on our executive leadership team. We have several women as senior leadership team, but it's still about 70-30. And, so in this case, Patrick's pointing out 97% female for hygienists. What do you do in that kind of work environment to change the game? Or do you?
I mean, you've got the numbers. What's the problem?
Go work for a dentist who treats you like a human being, right? I mean, I think that's easier said than done, but I'm not saying that's not a knock on dentists, but you want to find that's the most the most direct thing you can do is make sure that you're working in an environment that supports you. Not everybody has that choice.
I see Dr. Heidi and she doesn't take no mess, so I recommend finding.
See, what did you have for this one too?
No, I was going to say, I don't think it's the the percentages might make it, the odds are that it will be not as good of a situation, but I think you could be in a situation where it's 80% men and 20% women. And if they are sensitive to those things and they're not calling your girl and asking you to take the notes and get the coffee and whatever, you could be fine. You could also be the opposite. It could be, 20% men and 80% female, and it can be a worse situation. So I think it's the sensitivity of the people, not the numbers.
Yeah.
Leslie says, love the swap. Excellent example with the boy versus girl swap.
I'll give credit to C for that as the originator.
Love it. I'm going to start doing it. I'll start doing it out loud.
No, that's actually what we do. When people would keep on saying that, I would, you sometimes correct them and then say the same thing. You just said we hired a great girl out of Harvard. Pretend it was a guy and try saying it. And when they'd say we just hired a new boy out of Harvard, they'd start laughing because they couldn't, whatever. So that's actually, you have to do it at the right time, of course, but asking someone to repeat it, they cannot do it without laughing.
Of course, because that's what you say to your dog. Good boy, look at you.
So that rule also applies. So one of the areas that we do talk a little bit about in the book, that probably where we debated the most, is around chivalry, and kind of how to deal with should I hold the door? This whole like, am I allowed to hold the door? That terminology drives me crazy. But, holding the door, holding the elevator, all sorts of different things that can be triggers, I guess. And I mean, to me, it's like, if you're going to hold the door for a woman, hold the door for a man. If you don't hold the door for a man, then don't hold the door for a woman. Like, just try and like eliminate the gender side of things. And you can be a super polite person, but be very polite to all genders. And do not swear in front of a woman and say, pardon my French, because that also really pisses C off.
Yeah. Either swear or don't swear. Whatever you want to do, whatever the culture, like swear, don't swear, but don't swear and then look at women and go, ooh, sorry, Missy.
Lady
not
in the
okay.
room. Yeah.
Can we swear on this show? Because C has a really good retort.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, no fucking problem. It doesn't bother me. But I think the idea of what that says to me is like, I'm this delicate flower. You guys would be having way more fun, but I'm here, so you have to be like, So it just makes you so. If you didn't already seem like you're an other, you are now a bright light on you. So in them thinking they're being polite is actually the opposite. But again, I'm sure their intentions are good. Their mothers probably beat them into them. So I think they think they're doing the right thing, and it's really, in my point of view, it's the wrong thing.
Cody says, I like holding the door for anyone and everyone who's a little too far away. They do that little half dog walk.
That is literally, so I feel like Cody must have been like on our Zoom calls over the past couple of years when we were writing the book, because there's a whole section around awkward chivalry. At one point, the whole book was going to be called Awkward. And then a friend of mine told me it was just too hard to say, so we changed it. But there is this thing around awkward chivalry, right? And again, I'm with these sisters, which is when someone is trying to do the right thing, like assume positive intent, kind of reward positive behavior, hold the elevator for men, for women, for people of any gender. But we had a big debate about the whole, like, somebody is like, you're in the back of the elevator, there's 6 people in front of you, but because you're a woman, they're trying to let you out first. And there are times when chivalry truly, truly is awkward. And I'm kind of an efficiency freak, and it's just not efficient sometimes when chivalry is overdone. On the other hand, I feel like there's times I'm on an airplane, I'm not subtle, and I'm like, oh, this bag's heavy. And I'm like trying to get the bag up. And I'm like, I would not be offended if anybody helped me. It would not make me feel like a delicate flower. I'm just trying to take this overstuffed suitcase and get it above my shoulders. That's not natural. So, my attitude in that is it could be like a 24-year-old guy or like a 78-year-old woman. And no matter who was standing next to me, I just say, would it be helpful if I helped you?
I don't know what makes you think Cody's being chivalrous. He just, this is comic relief for him.
Yeah. Actually, Katie, behind you, show him the visual of that chapter. The elevator.
Let me. Let me find it. I've got a copy of the book right here. Hang on a second.
It's really nice to see how familiar Katie is with our book. Tick, tick, tick.
Hey. Hey now.
You're so mean.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, there we go.
Don't worry, you're not on the spot. We're not all just waiting. Okay.
So there you go.
Oh,
See, look, she's super far away. It's exactly like Cody there.
It's Cody's dream right there.
Except
You
Cody
make
wouldn't
it
be wearing
do
a
the
tie.
half walk jog thing.
I also have to say,
I'm totally going to start doing that though. I love that.
there's
And
2
when you
ways
do
I was
it-
thinking about it. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, when you do that, you have to hold the elevator and just look at the person who's like, several blocks away and go, I'll wait.
My literal dream.
There are 2 ways that I do that, and the one way is I like to pretend I'm shutting the door faster. I'll try to hold my hands on it too, because then it's like, and then the other is, I just keep it open after the person's come in.
Just stay there.
Keep looking. All right, we're at a part of the show where we got to start winding down, so we're going to do this. But
and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
and while we all should probably give it to Cody, I'm going to give it to Eugene because he came and asked a lot of good questions. So he had some good stuff. Eugene,
what gets me is when you congratulations, Eugene, that gets you a free apple. You just have to buy it, wash it, and make it into a tartlet. That would be my recommendation.
And then it's
But I hate
yours.
when you hold the door for someone and you don't even acknowledge that you held it. I'm like, give me $1 or at least like thank me for
I
holding
like
the
that
freaking
too.
door for you.
That's how we earn our bread.
I do not work here. You know?
All right. So we've come to that part of the show where we ask every single guest the same question. Sister Ann Flanagan, Sir Mix-a-Lot, everybody, DJ Cummerbun. We ask the question, what goes in your backpack? It could be something physical. It could be something metaphorical. Kerry, what is something physical someone would put in a backpack?
Ooh, extra set of teeth. DJ Cumberbun said that. And I was like, you just never know.
Yeah. How about something metaphorical? What could you add metaphorically?
Oh, kindness. Burlesque performer Ariel Helvetica put kindness in the backpack.
She was on the same episode with Nikki Porche, who runs a company called Buy From a Black Woman. And that was quite the episode. All right. We're going to go around. We're going to go around the horn here.
It was an amazing episode, by the way. It's just that she and I, she made a joke. Well, she didn't mean to make a joke, but she said something funny, and then we couldn't stop laughing, and I laughed over poor Ariel Helvetica's answer. So now in penance, I give her answer every time as an example. There you go. They're fully caught
They
up.
laughed like women. Okay.
Will you shut
right.
up?
Here's
That
the
is
question.
so untrue. How does a woman laugh?
Well, what was I going to say? Laugh like girls? Not
Oh,
after this
dear.
episode. All right, let me ask the question. I'm trying to close the goddamn episode. Okay. Hi, C. What would you add to your backpack?
I carry in my backpack hacky sacks. And I'm trying to bring. I've been doing it for the last couple of years. I'm trying to bring it back for like the late '50s set. And anyways, whenever we're in the park doing it, people are always fascinated. And they're like, "Oh my god, I love doing. That's so great!" So I carry hacky sacks with me.
I was always a good hacky sack supporter, meaning I would just point at the people doing it, going, "Yeah." Angelique, what do you got?
Moral
What would you add to the backpack?
Okay, I'm going to go with physical tissues because I often need one, but someone else often needs one. And so therefore I feel prepared and useful.
Christmas trees for me all the time.
I love it.
Travel pack.
Lori, what goes in the backpack?
Lip balm. Nobody can focus if your lips are chapped and they get dry while you're speaking. And in the spirit of Angelique, I need it for myself, always in my pocket. But if somebody else is like licking their lips or whatever, I'll offer them.
Are you
Girl,
a lip
I'm not-
balm
oh, sorry,
sharer
women, I'm
even
not sharing my
after the
lip gloss.
pandemic?
Here's what I do. I allow people, the one that I use, they could squeeze a little bit onto their finger. I don't put it
okay.
directly on my lips. I don't invite them to put it directly on their lips, but they can squeeze a little bit onto their finger.
Okay. I'm off camera, but I did a little squirm when you said that. Okay.
Yeah.
Katie, what do you got?
I got to take my dog Maggie. I mean, she goes everywhere with me. She's right
Aw.
back
Aw.
there.
Tilt it. You could do it. Hi, Maggie.
So
Hi,
there
Maggie.
she's sound asleep. I might have to bring the little giraffe guy with me too. But yeah, she's coming.
Aw.
Seems
Love
like
it. You
a
bring
good
your own moral support.
and a support animal for Maggie, the giraffe. That's great.
That's good.
My Grammy worked in a paper mill, so there wasn't a whole lot of exactly sexism because those ladies had to just, run the toilet tissue and the tissue paper and the paper towels. So the only thing they really couldn't do is, of course, when it got after a certain amount of weight. So like Lori said, no one ever said, get it, woman. They a fellow would push the 700-pound dolly or whatever. But the one time she did kind of impress people with her feat of strength, it was pretty neat. She